So, Alex.
So, Ben.
We're back.
Yes, we be back.
We are back. Do you remember what number one this
we
is?
We is back.
I think this is number 20 or is it 19? Last week.
I don't know. It is a number that I do know.
It is. I also agree with you on that it definitely is a number. I would just prefer to know what number it was.
It's between 1 and 1,000,000.
It's 19. It's 19. I just looked. It's 19.
There we go.
I double checked with the last one. So yes, welcome back. Let's cue that intro and then we can get right into today's episode. Right, so thank you one and all for rejoining us on this lovely podcast that we are also happy to be doing. Yes, welcome back to On the Spotcast number 19, and back to a more simplistic podcast this week because last week's one took too long to edit. So
oh, good.
I know. If you missed it, by the way, go back and watch it because otherwise it won't make sense. It was our special 2020 Cunters Awards ceremony with special awards ceremony intro with quotes from all around history and the world from our big fans. And we talked about our favourite trophies and platinums and all these types of things and gave them all lovely awards. But this week is Alex's idea, and I'm going to let Alex here explain to you exactly what his idea is.
Well, this week I've been playing through the Fate of Atlantis DLC in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is, in my opinion, I think both DLCs are both the best part of Odyssey, but especially Fate of Atlantis because of how much it delves into all the Isu lore and all that stuff, and it's just really cool as a Assassin's Creed fan from practically the beginning to actually be able to walk around actual Isu cities and whatnot. And that got me inspired me to think of the topic of our favourite DLCs, and both Ben and I have I've put together a list, be it written down or in our heads, of our top 5 DLCs that we have played. So, yes, let's go.
So, would you like to begin, or would you like me to begin?
You may begin, Mr. Aldred, because I am a nice person like that.
Thank you. Well, as you've already spoiled one of my entries, let's talk about the Fate of Atlantis.
Really? That's only your top 5? Cool.
I was sitting here looking at the games thinking, I don't actually have a lot of games that have... I think when I have DLC, I much prefer story expansions rather than just...
I definitely do. I definitely prefer a big, 20-hour of actual, new maps, new weapons, new this.
Rather than necessarily a new mode or something. Now, I'm all for a new mode. I wish the Ghost of Tsushima would get a New Game Plus mode. Fuck you, Sucker Punch, at the moment. Give us New Game Plus. But yeah, so I'm more about story expansion. So I was thinking, and this is one of my cheaty answers, because technically the Fate of Atlantis is 3 different DLCs.
No, see, the Tyranny of King Washington was, and Legacy of the...
Oh dear, it appears we are suffering technical difficulties. Are you there, Ward? Hello?
I'm here. Panic over. I'm still here, people.
Oh, I don't know what happened. You just disappeared. Oh dear. Okay. This is this is not going well.
What?
Your internet keeps disappearing. No.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Before.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear anything. It's just silence here. I think there's something wrong with the 4G in the area. It just suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth.
Well, it's fine my end, and I'm usually the one with internet issues, so
yeah, I don't know
what the hell it was.
Don't know. The 4G Wi-Fi just seemed to have cut off from there. I wonder if, I don't know, maybe it's having a slight issue or something. Who knows? But anyway, we're back. So as I was saying, anyway. The Fate of Atlantis, and I don't know if you heard me or not, it was one of my cheaty kind of ones, because both DLCs and Odyssey are both consisting of 3 DLC parts. So technically it's 3 bits of DLC, but it is kind of an overall story set into 3 different parts, because you've got Elysium, you've got the Underworld. Has it got a proper name, the Underworld, or was it...
It's just the Underworld.
Yeah, I was thinking. I don't know why I thought it had a name. It has Atlantis, obviously.
Of course.
Now, I picked it because of the same reason you also listed, because of the Isu world building and the story behind it. So obviously, you have there's 3 different chunks of DLC if you haven't played it, where Cassandra goes through some old Isu tech into kind of like, it's meant to be like a simulation of what's her name? I forgot her name.
Alethea.
That's it. Alethea's memories, aren't they? Actually, they're her memories that she has. We find that out towards the end. Spoilers, but of her memories that she's recreated, and Cassandra goes into in order to help Layla in the future learn more about the past.
Well,
basically.
So they know how to use the staff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Staff of Hermes.
Trismegistus. But yeah, so...
Yeah.
So basically Cassandra goes to these 3 different worlds. We go to Elysium, which is kind of like... It's meant to be like the heavenly resting place for like soldiers and people who died in battle and all this thing. But as soon as you get there, it's more like a dystopia than it is a kind of heaven, to be honest. And it's kind of got rebel factions in there. They've got an overruling leader who's a bit of a bitch. And it's far from...
A lot of political tension.
Yeah, it's very... the first Elysium's very mind-messing, I always thought, at the first one. Then, obviously, Cassandra goes to the Underworld, which I found depressing the entire time I was playing.
That's the point. I know, but they nailed it.
They definitely nailed it, but it drags on you when you're playing it. You just think, Christ, I just want this to be over. You know? And the only good parts about it is the parts with Phoebe, with... I forgot his name again. Christ, that's it. I'm sorry. It's been a while since I played through Odyssey, to be honest. But yes, you both characters from the main game who, spoilers, unfortunately didn't make it out the other end. And depending on your dialogue choices in the main game, also may have different opinions of you when you meet them in the afterworld. Apart from Phoebe. Phoebe's fine. But so yeah, those were some very beautiful moments. Helping Phoebe find her family was really nice. But yeah, depressing overall, to be honest. Full of horrible monsters that I just couldn't be asked to fight. People everywhere, and the Tartarus Rifts can just do one. They really can just do one. They're just more hassle than anything else. So then finally, Cassandra heads over to Atlantis, which is the mythical underwater city, which at the time is not underwater. It's above water, but then ends up underwater by the end. And it's the final place. It's it's not the biggest of the 3. I think Elysium is the biggest one overall.
Elysium is definitely the biggest.
But what Atlantis has over the other ones is the fact that what it lacks in overall size, it makes for in height and low size, is what I'd call. So there's a lot of different differences between. There's loads of low down bits, there's lots of high down bits. It's like a big sort of city that's almost... There's just so much to it. There's so many little nooks and bits and pieces like that. That's what makes Atlantis a very interesting place. And it's the biggest, most Isu-looking place as well that we encounter, because the underworld looks a bit underworldy. Elysium's more grass and fields, but Atlantis is a proper, actual Isu city made of, Isu building materials. There is a, they do specify on it's Adam, isn't it, or Antium or something?
Adamant. Yeah.
Adamant, which is like almost meant to be the same thing Wolverine has, isn't it? Adamantium.
Adamantium. This is adamant.
Which is
Another thing that you're saying about there's a lot of like depth to Atlantis. If you actually like explore, there's a lot of notes like scattered around Atlantis that will delve into like all these things and all the past cycles and the previous like Decastisas and the other like archons and that. There's a lot of like stuff like that. Like I found one about Hades being upset that Ross died, saying like that was the last thing my love and I shared, and that. There's a lot of like really cool hidden stuff in Atlantis.
Come on, I can't not kill a giant three-headed dog with that much of a pun of a name. Come on, Cerberus. I mean, that's just. I mean, I like the fact they include these things like Chikaros as well from the fake eagle bearer mission. But yeah, out of all the three of them, I think Atlantis, or the actual one where you're actually in Atlantis, is my favourite one, just because I like the city the most, the story is good, and I also think that out of all the characters, I prefer the ones in that DLC ending, that final chunk of DLC, the most, I think. I didn't really like Persephone that much. I mean, I guess you're not really meant to, but all I saw was giant, big-breasted women, because the women were massive in that game. For some reason, the East are fucking massive. I don't know why.
Yeah, and they have funky tattoos all over them.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's. I think it's going to be like their veins or their blood or something. I don't think it's tattoos or not. I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it's to do with their DNA, because as soon as in Atlantis you help that girl become you can decide to, if you want, become a hybrid Isu human hybrid, and she develops these things. So I don't think they're tattoos as such. I
think that's the consequence of the triple helix that Isu have.
Yes. So yeah, out of all three of them, it's my favourite one. Just mainly because I didn't like Persephone. Hades, obviously, you're not really meant to like him either.
Sure.
Yeah, and Poseidon, obviously he was actually probably, out of everyone, he was probably the only nicest guy you ever meet when you're doing these things. Out of all the Isu stuff, he's the most down-to-earth, almost human Isu that you meet. I mean, apart from Alethea, obviously. But yeah, there's some few nice moments across them. Phoebe, Leonidas in that mission as well. Obviously, I don't know who would choose to kill him at the end. I mean, honestly. I don't know who would do that. I never did that. I don't know if you did.
Probably.
So, I mean, no, you just couldn't, would you? But yeah, I mean, it's just a really great DLC. Great worlds. But obviously, as Alex said, for long-term Assassin's Creed fans, that much Isu world building is obviously a big hive mind of information to learn more about the fake race that never existed in the first place. Basically. It's weird how in video games we put so much stock into learning about things that didn't actually exist ever anyway. Isn't it, really? But there you go. That is. I mean, I don't know if you've got anything else to add about that. I mean, I think I've covered a lot.
At the end, Juno and Aita.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like, if you played since Assassin's Creed 3, you're like, oh my fucking god, it's Juno's husband, the one who becomes all the sages.
And he's even more of a prick than she is. Who knew?
Yeah.
Here we were thinking that from Assassin's Creed 3 that he was like a nice guy who got killed in the experiments and testings, and it turns out he was even more of a knob than she is.
You think, maybe when he was Bartholomew Roberts and John from IT and Black Flag, like his psychosis was consequence of being constantly reborn, but no, he was always a dick.
No, he was always just a dick. So I mean, at least he was consistent. But yeah, so that was interesting as well as fighting the what was it, the Hecatonchires? I can't remember how to pronounce it.
The Hecatonchires, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Well, they when they say that, they make it sound like it's plural, but it's only one. It's like some big monster thing that.
Well, it's like 100. I think it's meant to be like 100 bodies all sort of meshed together. Or something, because it's like the creature of 100 hands.
It's all part of this very dark side to Atlantis, where there's sort of human testing going on, like a kind of like an Isu black market, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we've pretty much covered between us Fate of Atlantis at least.
Yeah.
So I think we'll move on. I'll let you pick your one now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I know mine are going to be in just any old order. I think yours are going to be too, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. The first one I'm going to go for is also an Assassin's Creed DLC, Curse of the Pharaohs from Assassin's Creed Origins, which is, in my opinion, the best DLC that Assassin's Creed has ever given us. There's a balance that every game, like I think Open World one tries to achieve, which Origins' main game nailed: quantity and quality. And Curse of the Pharaohs absolutely nails that. It's a 35-hour, if you do everything, 35-hour long DLC with whole new areas, whole new story, and that. And every single second of it is good. From the beginning to end, just like Origins' main game, I was totally 100% invested in Curse of the Pharaohs. And also, well, first of all, brief go in the story. Bayek gets a letter from Aya that he has to go to Thebes because there's like undead pharaohs basically like attacking people. And it turns out it's like this massive hallucination created by an apple of Eden, which makes this chronologically, if you go in like the games from of course, Odyssey, set before Origins 41, etc. This is technically the very first time that a member of the Brotherhood encounters an apple of Eden or a piece of Eden, even though technically they wouldn't officially start acknowledging them until the end of Assassin's Creed 1. And when you, as a result of these hallucinations, you go through all the different aspects of the ancient Egyptian afterlife, and it's just like the atmosphere and like the visuals and the tone and the feel and of the afterlife is just amazing. Like it's just like, oh my god. Similarly to Fate of Atlantis, but I think better because like the feel of Egypt and the tone of Egypt, I think was a lot stronger in Origins. Bayek is a stronger character. The storytelling's a lot stronger, and yeah, it's just brilliant. Like a testament to what DLC can be when a developer has talent, time, and
money.
Just the passion for the game that they're working on,
and lots and lots of money as well. That part as well.
You need that money. You need that sweet money.
You need that sweet cash. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you what you're saying. It didn't make my list just because it got peeped to the post by some other DLCs, but I definitely do enjoy it. I have fond memories of travelling through the worlds, killing things. That annoying ginger guy who seems to be the key to everything.
He actually dies in the end. If you go, there's a snake den where if you go to, you find his corpse, and the apple that he was going to hide is gone.
The snakes have taken it.
Because snakes is like the symbol of the Order of the Ancients. Say the Order's got the apple.
I think back then, like you were saying though, no one seems to really care that there's this magical device. To be honest, do they?
Because
there's nothing.
Well, we won't know. We won't probably know till Valhalla, of course, because that's set between Origins and AC1. But as far as I know, the first sort of official time the Brotherhood actually, acknowledged the pieces of Eden and that was with Altair and Al-Mu'alim.
Well, they appeared to be at least searching for them for quite a while by that
point.
That
was the start of Altair was sort of the first one. Was like, we need to get these before the Templars.
Obviously, in Bayek's mind, he just puts it down to being some sort of old Egyptian god, because there's still gods and things back then. They believed in gods, didn't they? So there's not so much magical quality to it as there is in the more newer games. If you're done with that, I'll move on to mine.
Yep, you're next one.
To the first of a Witcher double special. To be fair, I could have done the whole video out of this, so you can be.
Yeah, grateful. We know you could have.
And I'm going to begin with. Well, I'm just going to do it in chronological order. I'm going to begin with the Hearts of Stone expansion. Or the Heart of Stone expansion.
Also known as the story expansion that not as many people mention because the other one exists.
But it's still...
And I'm not saying the name of the other one, even though everyone knows what it is, because I know you're going to bring it up
in a second, yes. So, it's just kind of cheating for me, although it's not. When I bought The Witcher 3, I bought the Game of the Year edition. So technically, even though it is DLC, I did not get it as DLC. Which is kind of... It still is DLC, though. You know, there's no question about it. It was added as DLC.
Well, those are Game of the Year editions bundling the extra stuff. Arkham City did.
You know, it is how it is. So yes, Hearts of Stone DLC is the first piece of DLC that was released for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It is set, well, it's kind of set within the existing world of Velen, the main sort of area that you're in during The Witcher 3. It's set up in the top right hand corner of it, which does exist already, but they kind of just added a bit more to that area of the world. Like they added some things in, you know what I mean? So they added in like different sort of areas, buildings, things like that. They added into it when they added DLC. So it's still within the same world, but kind of additionally added to it in a weird way. So the story basically is the reason I picked this one. I mean, I picked both of them, but the reason I'm talking about this one first is because I just wanted to talk about how good the story is. The story is all about Geralt. He as pretty normally receives a contract from a notice board. I think this this one definitely was off a notice board. It's just there was something in the sewers in what's the city called? Oxenfurt? Yeah. And it's killing them, so he goes to this big house, this mansion place, to a guy called Ulgeard von Everick, who gives him the contract to kill this giant thing in the sewers. So Geralt goes down there to find this thing. He comes across an old friend of his called Shani, who is like a nurse, basically someone else he shagged in the past, which is tend to be all these encounters are. She's down there because she's like a nurse for soldiers and she's helping wounded people, but they're all dead. Geralt goes in search of this monster, and it turns out that, spoilers, it's a giant toad. And when I say giant toad, I mean it's a pretty giant toad. And
is it bigger than the giant toads in Jedi Fallen Order?
Oh yeah, fucking hell, it's way bigger. I mean, this is like... those are like the... what are they called? The Ogdos?
Yeah, the Ogdos, or something like that,
yeah. How would I describe it? Imagine like you were standing in front of like a minibus.
Yeah.
That's the kind of size comparison.
Pretty big.
Like a really big transit van. You know, so that's what you're sort of... So you fight this thing, you're in its natural habitat in the sewer, it's jumping around all over the place. It's actually quite a challenging fight, although I did do it first time, and then read people complaining that it was difficult online. I didn't really find that difficult. But, okay, maybe they're just shit. It's quite a difficult fight. Unfortunately, when you kill it, it has like acid things in its stomach. They fall over Geralt. Geralt goes unconscious. Eventually wakes up as a prisoner. And it turns out what you killed was actually a prince that got cursed into being a frog. And those people that have captured you actually came there to save him and turn him back, but you've got there first and killed him. So they're arresting you and taking you off to be beheaded. And you're on a boat, you're on a prison ship, you're on your way back to their land, and then all of a sudden this man appears on the boat. His name is Gaunto Dim. Now, those of you who have played the first game remember right at the very, very beginning, not the first game, the main game even, right at the very beginning when you're first in White Orchard, you come across Gaunto Dim as just a random man sitting in a bar. You're looking for Yennefer, you ask him questions, he's just an absolutely normal bloke. He just says he's a mirror salesman. He's just a guy that's going around merchant doing his business. You never see him again. You never see him again for the rest of the game. And then all of a sudden, he appears here, offers to get you out if you agree to make a pact with him. Geralt agrees. Then you get the idea that something wrong is up because a weird tattoo appears or gets burnt into Geralt's face. Then the ship crashes. You wake up on a beach. Some guy's been beheaded. Then you break loose in quite a really cool scene that I featured in many videos. You fight off the guards, then you go and find Gaunt O'Dim, who explains to you that he's kind of this otherworldly being. It's not entirely sure what he is, but it's basically, in Witcher lore, it's almost pretty much like he's the devil. And then basically, from there, begins a whole series of events where you're helping to fulfill 3 wishes of this guy who's permanently left alive by also the same Gaunt O'Dim curse. You go through all amazing different places, worlds, amazing stories, amazing fights, but at the heart of it you've got this Gaunt O'Dim character who has gone from being just a plain merchant to being literally the most powerful thing in existence. He can freeze time, he can just kill anyone he wants, mind control people, can disappear and reappear in an instant, and cannot be killed, basically. And you end up having a boss fight with him anyway, but a boss fight of riddles rather than actually fighting. So yeah, it's just a really, really good DLC, a really great story, and a really great villain in Gaunt O'Dim, and it's really quite a good credit to CD Projekt Red for being able to create such an amazing villain out of the person that everyone forgot existed. But the second that they saw him, remembered who it was, and then wondered how the hell and who the hell is this guy. So yeah, that's
the power of a good. That's the power of a good twist, right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll talk enough about that one. You can talk about yours.
Hey, my next one is the Season of Infamy from Batman Arkham Knight.
Oh yes.
Basically, because that's exactly what all the Arkham Knight story DLC should have been. We should have gotten like 4 different, because there's 4 seasons in a year. There should have been like 4 different seasons of Infamy, like the Season of Infamy, the Season of Terror, the Season of Anarchy, the Season of fear, and each of them should have been exactly like this: 4 different villains.
I
from 4 different
refuse
sets of
to
missions.
think that Gotham has 4 seasons in a year because it's always raining. It's always like winter there or something, is what I think. I don't think they have any other months.
It is sunny in that brief Gordon scene when he goes into the theatre.
I suppose.
It's sunny then.
I suppose, but all the time you play the games, and every single one, it's either snowing or raining, so I presume they never have summer. It's always winter in Gotham. That's what in my mind.
It's never daylight in Gotham, I do know that much.
No. I think it's like that place in isn't it like in Alaska or something where they have for 6 months they don't have any sunlight.
Yeah.
I think that's where Gotham is as well. I think Gotham has for 6 months they just don't have sunlight, and that's when Batman does all his work. But yeah, carry on.
But yeah, that's exactly what they've made. Even today, Arkham Knight is still a beautiful game, and of course it's got strong as fuck art direction. And they built this city, they got all this stuff.
We built this
and with
city.
the DLC, they really wasted it, apart from Season of Infamy. And again, that's what all the DLC should have been. And it's also, in my opinion, some of the strongest side quests in the main game. You've got a cool little homage to Arkham Asylum with Killer Croc, where you team up with Nightwing, which inside a crashed spaceship. Yep. Airship, where you also
spaceship,
have a nice cool...
yeah. The aliens invaded Gotham that time.
You have a nice,
with a killer Croc who is shrunken in size compared to the previous games, but gotten a little bit more scaly.
Yeah.
He's got a weird tail as well.
And another thing also with that mission, not only do you have the cool Arkham Asylum vibes, you have the cool being the tag team stuff with Nightwing as well as the boss fight, you also get a nice little extra you sort of feel sorry a bit for Croc at the end because his condition has accelerated so much because they've just been constantly chopping bits off of him and whatnot, and he's proper mentally degrading.
You see it in the video. You walk in there and they're just cutting off his arm.
Yeah. Because of course reptiles can grow bits back in there, and it's you're meant to rescue this dude, but you're he kind of deserves to be eaten for what he's done. Yeah. You got this cool little sort of trial thing with Mad Hatter, which ends in a really cool boss fight, which goes over bits of Asylum and City and this little sort of comic book
storybook.
You've got a brilliant epilogue for Ra's al Ghul following Arkham City, where you can choose whether to let him die with dignity or that, which again adds a lot to the League of Shadows, brings in Nissa. Al Ghul, who was totally not mentioned in the other ones, but then again, neither was Jason Todd, and he's like the main factor of Arkham Knight's plot. And then you have, in my opinion, the perfect ending for Mr. Freeze and Nora. Like, Rocksteady, in my opinion, gave us the definitive conclusion to Mr. Freeze's character arc, especially if you consider Coco Half from Arkham Origins, his side quest, from Arkham City,
Oh dear.
from Ignition trilogy, in my opinion, it's the perfect ending.
It appears Alex is...
It's such a powerful thing to experience.
Okay.
Unspoiled.
Fair enough. Sorry about that,
Yes,
listeners. Your connection was it was going poor again, and it's saying poor now. So I'll talk a little bit because I think Alex can still hear me.
I can hear you. Hello.
So yeah, Season of Infamy. I'll just give my brief opinion. The Killer Croc one.
Yeah.
In the crashed spaceship. Very good DLC once again. It was good to sort of team up with Nightwing and do that one. Yeah, you do feel quite bad for Killer Croc, and you do.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird seeing him with a big tail. Did he have that big tail in Asylum?
No, not in Asylum or Sea or Origins. That's mostly because, like we said, the conditions accelerated bloody
I think
much.
it would have been great.
That's why.
I always think, though, is whenever I see him, it reminds me of Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter.
It's ironic, it's the Crocodile Hunter, and he died when a stingray stung him in the heart.
Well, I can just imagine him wrestling Killer Croc to the ground and going, "Whoa, little beauty!" And, as he used to.
Okay, mates, look like we've got a big boy here. Bloody hell.
And he's wrapping a bit of tape around Killer Croc's mouth. And, yeah, basically. So that's what I always think. But, the Mad Hatter one, interesting. Rescuing hostages from the cars was annoying at times because sometimes you occasionally came to a bomb that just didn't want to work.
That could be hell on New Game Plus.
So that was a bit annoying. Excuse me. The Racial Ghul one, that's a really nice one. It's a particularly nice moment when if you do choose to, and I'm gonna just spoil it here, so people who don't want to know, sorry.
Yeah.
Depending, if you choose to let him live, he will then kill Nyssa.
Nyssa, yeah.
Which you sort of feel is not really great. If you choose to not necessarily kill him, but let him die, you do obviously then have that bit when you fight off the remaining, loyalists. And then you have that very nice moment where he's in the prison cell dying, and he says that he's proud of Batman of what he did.
Yeah.
So that's quite nice.
He made the choice that Raish was never strong enough to make, which was to just stop using the pit. You've lived long enough. Just embrace death.
Just die. And then obviously we had the Mr. Freeze DLC, which, as I agree with you, is a very touching ending where, once again, I'm going to spoil it a little bit here, where, Nora's been taken. You basically do eventually find her, but this time when you find her, unlike the previous games, her cryo chamber has been too badly damaged and can't sustain her anymore, and has no choice but to let Nora out. And then you have this weird moment where she comes out into Gotham for the first time on this rooftop, meets Batman. Turns out she's completely unfazed by him because she could actually hear what was going on the entire time she's been frozen.
Yeah, she was conscious. All those years in cryo, she was 100% conscious and aware as to what Victor's become.
And then she has this kind of beautiful moment where Victor sees she's out of there. He wants her to go back in. Then the Arkham Knight's troops are attacking the boat where he is. And you have this really cool bit where you hop in the Batmobile with Nora and you go through this kind of ice snow track from the explosion that's caused from the cryo thing on the ship. And then you have this rather beautiful moment where Batman lets Mr. Freeze go with Nora to live out, the remainder of their days, however long that will be in them. So yeah, it's a very nice ending. Very probably.
I don't want you to die, Nora. Then let me live. Ooh, that gets to you. That hits every time I play that line. Ooh.
We should reenact it, shouldn't we? You'd
No.
yeah, let's reenact it. Shall I do Mr.
No.
Freeze or do you want to do
No,
Mr. Freeze?
no, it's not. No. Your next DLC. What's your next DLC?
Then let me live. Funny.
And the winner of the Worst Actor Award goes to Benjamin Aldred.
Thank you. It's an honour. I'd like to thank no one. Thank you. Goodbye. So moving on then, shall we? On to the next bit of
Your
DLC.
next DLC.
And I'm not going to go back to Witcher immediately. I'm going to skip ahead to another
Good.
game. And
Okay, then.
it is Frozen Wilds in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Part of me kind of like, when you said you're not going to Witch, I was kind of thinking, what other ones would he pick? And I thought, well, he loved Horizon, and that had a big DLC, so maybe.
I don't know, I did Hunger Games.
Yeah.
There you go. So, Frozen Wilds is the only DLC that Horizon had, and it's a story expansion set after the events of the main game. And Aloy hears of this new machine threat very up north in the world that she's in. I'm not entirely sure what part of America it's meant to be, I can't remember. But basically, yeah, she hears of this big new machine threat, and she decides, being, this person she's become, this hunter of machines, she's on this pursuit of knowledge, to learn more about the old world and what came before, and, what happened to the world. Obviously, we know what happened to the world, but the whole idea of Horizon is you go to all these... There's a lot of great moments where you explore these old rundown, old human buildings, which to us are modern, but to them is so futuristic. And you get to explore it all, and it's so weird because you kind of learn all about what happened to the world and all. And that's one of the best things about Horizon is going through these old sort of, remnants of civilization and learning about it, and using Aloy's focus to hear old video messages and just to learn more about the world. And basically, you head up into the north, into the snowy north, and it gives us a great example to see exactly what Guerrilla Games can do with snow. Because they already created an amazing...
I think Killzone 3 did that years ago already, though.
I know, but as in
but
terms
then again,
of...
this is snow bolted onto a competent game.
Yeah, this is snow. This is an open world snow, not just a level. This is obviously quite a decent sized map, a brand new map, brand new location. So the best part about it is actually something I generally quite like, is that with this, Aloy doesn't just, like Bayek does, receive a letter and go on a boat and appear there. You actually travel there. You actually go to the north of the world. You climb over the mountains yourself. You actually travel to this new DLC place yourself, which is actually quite nice. So it does actually fill in that bit, and you have this amazing world covered in beautiful snow and geysers. The steam that come out. I don't want to call them geysers. Geysers is probably a better word.
One of the two. I think it's like scones and scones.
These beautiful natural rock pools and formations. It's a very kind of snowy but volcanic place, because there's actually the main centerpiece.
So it's basically Iceland and Greenland.
Kind of, pretty much, kind of. Yeah. Very similar to that. It's such a hot place, but so very cold. And it's a frozen wild. And the main feature of the world is this massive erupting volcano off in the distance, which actually turns out to be a massive machine forge, because basically, if you're unfamiliar with the story of Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm going to just briefly spoil it, just so it makes sense. Basically, we are in a post-apocalyptic world, in a world that was basically eaten alive by machines. Basically, there's this big, back in our time, or what was our time, robots and, machines, as they're called. They're not actually called robots, they're called machines, were a more common feature than they are in our actual real world. And there was a big company called Pharaoh, I believe it was, who produced these robots, and accidentally they produced a robot that could run on biofuel, which means it can consume things like, like matter, so they can like leaves off trees, grass, things like that. Anything that's like biomatter, it can consume it and convert it into energy or fuel to run. And then it turns out there was a glitch in the robot system where they basically evolved, or not necessarily evolved, but they glitched out of the need to actually have to, what they basically did is they glitched in a certain way, which meant they just started to not follow their commands anymore. Almost seemed to get new directives and basically started to attack the world, which meant obviously all the people, all life on Earth basically got completely sucked away until there was just this barren rock with not a single blade of grass on it anymore, because there was just nothing left, because they converted it all into biofuel. And the worst part about it is not only did these big machines, these Deathbringers as they're called in Horizon Zero Dawn, not only did they consume all this biomatter, but they also learned how to self-replicate themselves. So they were actually replicating themselves and eating biomatter. So they were basically outnumbering everyone. And basically all life on Earth, bar some that got locked away in vaults and things, was basically completely exterminated. And life on Earth became impossible because there was just nothing. They couldn't even breathe outside anymore because of what happened. But they found out this was going to happen, and whole teams of scientists basically got hidden away underworld and created this new project, which was to help the world rebuild after they had died. So they basically made this whole amazing set of AIs that could generate and basically recreate life, recreate plants, recreate a whole biosphere, basically all out of AI, and that is what they created. And the world that we're in, Horizon Zero Dawn, is the result of that recreation, and Aloy is a result of a machine that created her to actually be a genetic recreation of the head scientist that actually did it all those years ago. So that's roughly what happened. And when you get into Frozen Wilds, it's just an amazing story. You learn more about the fucking robots and their factories, and you learn about the new threat, and there's all these machines going wrong and you have to destroy the factories. But not only that, but there's so much more world building, there's so much more of the old world building, almost similar in the way Fate of Atlantis has the Isu stuff. Now we learn actually about our world, which is a bit of a change. And also one of the best parts about it is you actually meet one of the AIs that's still active that they created from all that time ago. And you basically, she becomes almost like your friend, and you can go in there and have conversations with her. She'll teach you about the old world, and it's just a very, very nice way to do it. And I can't wait to see what comes out in Forbidden West when that gets released on the PlayStation 5, hopefully later this year. So yeah, or next year. That is Frozen Wilds.
Cool.
Yours.
My next one is Mass Effect 3, the extended cut. Now, even though the Mass Effect trilogy, the original Mass Effect trilogy, that is, fuck Andromeda, is my favourite game, trilogy, whatever, ever. Even more so than Assassin's Creed. If there was one to reach Assassin's Creed levels for me, it'd be the original Mass Effect trilogy. Despite that, I've only actually played one, one DLC, which is the extended cut, because all the others cost so much, and the extended cut's free. The extended cut is, an extended cut of Mass Effect 3's ending. When Mass Effect 3 came out, the ending, just totally, the reaction to the loot boxes and all that in EA's Battlefront 2. Yeah. Imagine that amount of uproar and controversy surrounding the ending of a game.
Wasn't it a multiple choice ending?
And that is basically the reaction to Mass Effect 3's ending.
Wasn't it a multiple choice ending?
Pissed off.
Wasn't it a multiple choice ending, though?
It did, in that it was basically the same ending, but the sort of light. So basically, Mass Effect 3, the driver throughout the whole Mass Effect trilogy, there's been this threat of basically a race of sort of machines called the Reapers, which every 50,000 years enters the galaxy, wipes out all advanced civilization, and then leaves. You spend Mass Effects 1 and 2 trying to stop them from reaching, from actually coming. Mass Effect 3, they come. The entire of Mass Effect 3 is basically a war against the Reapers, which also includes you having to build assets and materials for a giant super weapon called the Crucible, which the previous civilization called the Protheans, which were the victims of the last time that the Reapers came and wiped out all advanced life, basically left behind the plans for. And so that's the whole sort of driving force of Mass Effect 3. It's you having to build this super weapon and fight this war. And at the end of Mass Effect 3, you basically get a choice between destroying the Reapers, which in the original ending also meant pretty much wiping out all technology, controlling the Reapers, or synthesis, which was basically organic and synthetic / cybernetics, sort of life, sort of came together. So basically, and the original ending, the only sort of differences were blue light for control, red light for destroy, and green light for synthesis. You go through 3 30 to 50 hour games doing all these different choices, like saving these ones, doing this, doing that, doing this, and all your choices carry over from game to game, and each player have very different experiences because of it. And at the end of it, it basically amounts to blue, red, or green. And fans were so pissed that their choices and all this stuff ultimately didn't amount to anything. So BioWare put together the extended cut, which was an expansion of Mass Effect 3's original ending. And I was originally on Mass Effect 3's ending because I counted all of Mass Effect 3, which was my favourite Mass Effect game, as the ending. So for me, the final 5 minutes didn't ruin it all, and I in time got used to it. But the extended cut, in my opinion, was perfect. There's I actually looked up a thing. There's 30 different options for depending on your things in Mass Effect 3 alone. There's at least 30 different combinations. Going through all the different things that you did in the first 2 games as well, there's a lot of different ways that the extended cut can play out, which is exactly what I wanted from Mass Effect 3's ending, pretty much. So yeah, Mass Effect 3 extended cut.
It sounds like Mass Effect fans are a bit crybaby-ish.
No, they just wanted all their choices that they debated over heavily throughout all the games to actually amount to something at the end.
That's not very realistic, is it?
No, but the kind of one of the creative director of Mass Effect at the time, Casey Hudson, he actually said in an interview, it's the ending's not just going to be a copy and paste, choose the color and fest, and that's exactly what Mass Effect 3's original ending was. It still technically kind of is, but I say all your choices and that play into the ending cutscenes and stuff a lot more than it did previously. And plus it filled a lot of plot holes in as well.
I feel like, despite whatever you choose, it ultimately has to end in one way. Either they get destroyed, humanity gets destroyed, or there's some sort of happy medium. I mean, it's always going. It's like real life, okay? No matter what choices you make along the way in your life, no matter what you do, achieve, don't achieve, it all ends in the same way.
Yep.
In a depressing. I know it sounds depressing, but that's the point I'm trying to make. So I wouldn't. I don't know. Video gamers, huh? So let's move on. And I'm going to talk about not Witcher still, but I'm going to talk about my penultimate one. And I'm going to try to do it fairly quickly because we're actually getting on to almost 50 minutes now.
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
And it is technically a cheaty one, and it is Fallout 4 mods. Now.
Oh, that counts. That counts. It's DLC is technically additional content, and
technically,
mods additional content.
And what I'm saying is not necessarily the mods themselves, but the fact that Bethesda gave us the option to have mods on PS4, and in my opinion, that is a DLC mode added on. because they added on a mods mode.
Well, it can be anything from a texture swap to a whole new like set of missions. So yeah, and that's basically what DLC, what sort of DLC kind of is, from the smallest stuff to the most complex stuff.
And mods, as you can imagine, add just masses to Fallout 4. I mean, there's just a sheer amount of replayability, endless amounts of weapons, modes, enemies, outfits, skins, missions, buildings. I mean, anything you want, you're pretty much, as long as it's in a game file somewhere, you can make it and you can use it. So, or other people.
Sanctuary Hills would not be half of what it is without the mods.
And that is why I'm building up, because the sheer amount of workshop building materials there are, wow, my god, I mean, it's almost too much. I mean, I've been working on Sanctuary Hills for a while now. For a long while, before mods came out, you had a choice to use the basic stuff that was in the workshop mode. Then came the DLCs, the normal DLCs, you know, Far Harbour, Nuka World, which were all up there for my suggestions, by the way, in DLCs. So I enjoyed playing them. We played them together. Alex really loved that series when I made him sit through all other Fallout 4 DLC.
It wasn't terrible. I was interested in the world and the story.
But yeah. So not only did you have all those new objects get added in when the DLC came out, but then you had the modders come in and they unlocked every single object that Bethesda used to create the game and made it in a workshop mode. So basically now you've got endless amounts, thousands and thousands of objects and things you can use in the workshop mode. And I just don't know where to begin. You go on there and you're like, bloody hell, I just don't know what to do. It's just so much. It's almost too much now to actually build with, because it's just you always see this and think, oh, it'd be great, I could add this. Oh no, I could add this as well, and you never actually get anything done because you're constantly seeing something new that you can add on. So yeah, the mods just add a sheer amount of replayability, and especially to the workshop mode, add a whole new level of, you know, creation. So yeah, that is my penultimate DLC, and I'd encourage you to get on with yours.
My penultimate one is a kind of cheesy one because it's sort of a two-parter affair. The Tatooine and Hoth DLCs for Star Wars The Force Unleashed 1. The reason you put them together is because The Force Unleashed, you play as Darth Vader, which was canon, but it's not now, since Disney basically bought the rights to Star Wars and
bloody
wiped out the original
Detective Comics. You're really not doing well today, are you? First there were spaceships landing in Gotham. Now DC has taken over Star Wars. It's not going well. Oh dear. We appear to have lost Alex. I'll try to fill in where he left off. Basically, cool's gone. I'll carry on then while he's saying, basically, The Force Unleashed, it basically, you play as Darth Vader's apprentice. He rescues this child from Kashyyyk and raises him as his, like, naughty apprentice on the side that the Emperor doesn't know about. And, the DLC that Alex is on about, there's one set on Tatooine where you're basically I think there's one on Hoth as well where you go after Luke Skywalker. There's one when you go after Han Solo and Chewbacca, and there's one when you go after Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. It doesn't look like Alex is coming back. Hello? He's not answering. Oh, I don't know where he is. Where is he? I don't know. This is weird. I'm doing a podcast on my own. I'll tell you what. Let's move on to The Witcher. I don't know. Let's move on to The Witcher. Maybe Alex is coming back. Maybe. Sorry about the loud noise. I'm trying to call him. Hello.
I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know. I was just. I've covered like the kind of The Force Awakens. I've talked about Leia and The Force Awakens. The Force Unleashed. I've covered Leia, and you go after Han Solo and Chewbacca and Ben Kenobi and that. So you can just add on to what you want to say.
Oh, well, I don't know what the fuck happened there with that. I just loved because basically, I think did you explain that it's basically an alternative timeline that at the end you get
I didn't go into too much detail. I just said that you're the Force Unleashed, you're Darth Vader's naughty apprentice on the side who the Emperor don't know about.
And you basically get tricked by Vader to start up the Rebel Alliance, which was the original official origin for the Rebel Alliance. And at the end, you fight Vader on the Death Star to save Bail Organa, Leia, etc. Well, you probably all said this. And you get a choice at the end to either fight the Emperor or kill Darth Vader. And if you fight the Emperor, Starkiller dies, and that's basically the canon ending, or was the canon ending. But if you kill Vader, you then end up taking on the Emperor anyway, and then you get basically half killed, and then you get Vader, quote unquote, Vaderized yourself, and you actually become a sort of Vader-esque thing yourself. And the Tatooine and Hoth DLCs carry on from that ending, and it's just really cool to see this like alternative timeline thing in Star Wars where you go to Jabba's palace, you fight and kill Boba Fett, you kill Obi-Wan, and then you're at the Battle of Hoth and you actually convert Luke into like joining the dark side and that. And I really wish they'd done just one more to play off of Sith Luke being your apprentice. But still, what we got, like that alternative timeline stuff, is something really, really cool. And I love it when like superhero stuff do it, and I wish Star Wars would do it more, because there's a lot of stuff in Star Wars they could do really cool, interesting things off. Like if Anakin didn't join the dark side and stuff.
Yes, but we know what the Star Wars fan base is like, don't we?
Oh yeah. No one hates. Actual quote from somewhere. No one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
So yeah, we know how toxic it is. So it's kind of, you can't please everyone. So
yeah, The Last Jedi and the sequel trilogy is good.
Well, personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing what DC are going to do with Star Wars now, because I think they can do some good stuff with it. So
yeah, especially as Zack Snyder's back finishing his Justice League.
Now we can finally have the Batman Star Wars crossover that we've all been waiting for. Speaking of that, did you know
Ben Affleck is actually officially back as Batman?
Well, only in the Flash movie, though, isn't it?
At the moment.
If
Snyder gets his JL2, Justice League 2 and 3, which by all accounts he will, Ben Affleck will be back, because that's why he signed on to the role anyway, because of Snyder's vision.
I hate to spoil your moment here, but we are going to be talking about DLC, and it is almost an hour now since I spent 5 minutes trying to reconnect you.
Well, we only have one left each, so go.
Right, so my final one then. It's the one you've all been waiting for. It's the one that you've all been waiting for. It's the one you've all been waiting for. It's Blood and Wine. On The Witcher 3. So, The Witcher Blood and Wine is the second story expansion pack in The Witcher 3. This one is set in a whole new world. A whole new world. It's basically set in a region of The Witcher 3 world called Toussaint, which is basically like the France of The Witcher 3 world. It's a big sort of open green hilled expanse of land filled with vineyards and flowers and big palaces and cobbled streets, and it's basically like France but in The Witcher. And you go there, even the characters speak in French accents, so they really went all out for it. And you go there, basically Geralt receives, once again, a contract from two old friends of his from the books. And he basically travels to Toussaint and basically discovers that there's basically some sort of monster that's basically going around killing people in really brutal attacks. And I'm going to spoil this a little bit if you haven't played it. You travel to Toussaint, you basically start this pursuit of this monster. You discover that it's an intelligent monster, that these kills are, they're planned, they're attacked, and they end up with discovering that it's a vampire that's doing it. And vampires in the world of The Witcher aren't just sort of like, what you'd expect in Halloween, but they're proper, like, really powerful beings. Pretty much on par. They're pretty much one of the only few monsters that are more powerful than the Witchers are, that generally can give them a bit of trouble. which hence the blood and wine. So Geralt starts this massive story-driven things of old friends, brand new characters, great characters, and this massive, really nice world, chasing this monster and a whole other load of monsters and loads of amazing quests and side quests all across this world. It's a really great story, but it also gives what I think The Witcher really needed, which is a really great ending as well. Depending on the ending you choose, your ending choices as throughout The Witcher can affect the way the world finishes, but Geralt's sort of story is pretty much the same, whatever happens. Basically, certain people can die, certain people might not die. What happens to the killer might happen, might not happen. So yeah, you can generally, have a lot of different endings, or about 4 or 5 different endings. But yeah, it's just a really great world, really great characters, and just really great boss fights as well. It's got one of the best fights at the end there against the main vampire guy called Detlef. I featured it a lot in my old Moaning Mondays videos. It's probably one of the best boss fights in the entire game. It's generally extremely difficult on Death March difficulty. But honestly, a really great game. And as I was saying, the ending is a really great one, because you actually, in the story, inherit a sort of like a house. It's basically like a vineyard with a house, like a sort of, you've got your house and you've got all your lands and things like that. And Geralt basically is given this as a reward for killing a monster, and in true RPG style, you can spend money on renovating this, and having your planting things outside, renovating the inside the house, the outside of the house, and basically bring it, Corvo Bianco it's called, into a nicer state. And the best part about it is right at the very end of the DLC, whoever you chose to be with in the main story actually comes and lives with Geralt, and Geralt basically, it's implied that he probably doesn't be a Witcher anymore, and sort of, ends his life, well, not ends his life, but spends a lot, retires there with the person of choice. So if you pick Yennefer will be there, Triss will be there. If you don't pick either of them, neither of them will be there, and it'll be like Dandelion or Ciri will turn up. If you try to shag both Yennefer and Triss and lie to both of them that you're not shagging the other one, neither of them will be there. So, yeah, it's just a really nice ending. And in the 10-year anniversary video that CD Projekt Red made a couple of years ago, I think it was now, they actually show an extended cutscene with all the characters from the games at your vineyard, showing that Geralt has, continued to live his life there with his friends, and he's having a happy ending after all. So yeah, just a really nice ending and a really great DLC.
Mm-hmm.
And yours?
Well, you were saying about a good ending. My final choice, which is a really random one, as part of the main reason why this is on here is because of what it does for the ending of the main game, and that is the Blade of Galadriel DLC for Middle-earth Shadow of War. Middle-earth Shadow, well, both Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, you play as Talion, who's a
Ranger of Gondor.
Gondorian Ranger who was brought back to life by the basically the spirit of Celebrimbor, who was like the elf who actually forged the rings of power for Sauron.
Not canon, according to Lord of the Rings fans.
You spend the first game you spend the Shadow of Mordor basically getting revenge over the death of your family who were executed at the start by the Black Hand of Sauron. And at the end of that, you decide to forge a new ring and basically wage war on Sauron. And Shadow of War is basically you fighting that war. But at the start of Act 3, which is, in my opinion, just one of the best hours of gaming I've ever experienced, you actually find out that Celebrimbor wants to dominate Sauron himself and basically become the new, High Ruler, the Bright Lord. Instead of the Dark, because Sauron was the Dark Lord, Celebrimbor wants to become the Bright Lord and basically just is kind of crazy. And Galadriel, who's like this elven kind of assassin and that, who's also appeared here and there throughout Shadow of War, she willingly becomes Celebrimbor's new host, which leads to Talion almost dying until he makes a deal with Shelob, and he becomes a fucking Nazgul, and he leads an undead army on Migas Morgul, and it's amazing. But not for my love for the main game, the reason DLC's on it. It's set during the 4th act of Shadow of War's main game, which is basically the Shadow Wars, which is just like this decade, like this multiple decade within the span of the game, like 60, 70 years of just Talion like fighting back Sauron's forces, trying to keep like this balance of light and dark in Mordor,
and in his own mind as well.
Yeah, and his own mind, which is a reason, which again, the reason why Blade of Galadriel's on it. It adds quite a lot of depth to both the Shadow, because in game the Shadow Wars is basically just these endless sieges, but actually adds quite a bit to like you said, Talion's inner conflict, because at the end you actually have to fight him, because there's like bits of dialogue in like the post game of like Talion's like trying to keep his like minds together, and at the end of it, of course, he eventually succumbs to the will of the ring because it's just too much for him. But they actually show like Talion's conflict, and at the end you fight him and you sort of bring him back like to himself briefly and that, and I really like that. I really like them adding a lot of depth to Talion, and also the ending, the very ending, which is set like during basically the epilogue cutscene of the main game, where Sauron, the ring is destroyed, Sauron's defeated, and Celebrimbor, who spent like all these years fighting Sauron atop Mount Doom, which is the origin of the Eye of Sauron. Celebrimbor's actually freed, and Galadriel basically sees this and basically makes it her mission to take Celebrimbor down. In my opinion, that sets up a really cool and interesting like premise for the hopefully soon to happen 3rd game.
Well, then you have the tie-in, and then you have the tie-in with the movies as well, don't you?
Yeah. I like I don't know what many actual fans thought of that origin for the Eye of Sauron, but I liked it.
And it turns out when Eye of Sauron explodes, Celebrimbor escapes, etc., etc.
Yeah, as I said, and Galadriel makes it her mission to take him down, which sets up
and Talion is Nazgul Talion is riding away on his what are they called, the dragony things? I can't remember.
Drapes.
Yes, and then he gets hit by a big sort of like lava rock thing, which happens in the movies as well. And it turns out kind of links in to say, actually, that was Talion that got hit by that. Then you get this nice.
That's him driving, riding towards Frodo and Samwise Gamgee in slow motion while haunted music is playing.
And then, and then basically you have this nice ending where he finally gets to the afterlife. A lot of people didn't see that cutscene originally because the original Shadow Wars was so fucking long until they shortened it. And a weird kind of pre-rendered scene where Talion doesn't actually look really much like Talion's face.
Yeah.
That's
why Blade of Galadriel was on my list, because what it adds to Shadow of War's like final act and what it sets up for the 3rd game, hopefully.
Yes.
No.
Awesome. Lovely.
Awesome.
Top banana, governor. Oh dear. I tell you what, I've been drinking Lucozade this entire time and it's beginning to make me a little gassy. Ugh. But I need it. It's definitely not as hot as it was last time we recorded a podcast.
No, thank God.
It's cooling down now. Oh well. Thank you all for listening to this week's podcast. It was lovely to have you.
We've gone on so long that we're not doing anything. Well, you know what I've been playing. I've been playing Fate of Atlantis.
Well,
but I don't know. Do we have any comments on the last podcast?
No.
No.
And I don't have any platinums to talk about. Actually, do I? I don't know. I'll leave it for next time.
Okay.
Because I'm not entirely sure. So yeah. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know your favourite DLCs in the comments. I probably should have said this earlier. But, please do. Audience participation and all that. And if you would like to see DC take over Star Wars or aliens invading Gotham, then please let us know that as well. Because I think that is two I mean, it sounds like DC's got it all going on. First they're taking over Star Wars, then Aliens are coming in. Sounds great. I like the sound of this, you know. This is going quite well. Is this one of our other predictions, along with the Far Cry 6 storyline prediction?
That was good.
Well, I'm in talks with Ubisoft at the moment, you know. I'm having the back and forth. I'm having the back and forth, you know, sending the emails back and forth, you know. We're just discussing it, Just early days, but, you know, I think I got them on board. They're getting there. So, yeah, I'll keep you guys abreast of the situation. Thank you all for listening to this lovely podcast, and we'll see you all in podcast number 20, which you would think might be special, but it's probably not going to be. So, goodbye!
I have expected you. Greetings. Do you know why I live here? Yes. I have been pondering on exactly that question. All in good time. First, a question for you. Imagine but a whisper pushing aside all in its path. What will you burn? What will you spare? Yes. Few could resist such a challenge. You once told me you did not believe in destiny. Do you have no better reason for acting than destiny? Are you nothing but a plaything of fate? Yes. Do not be afraid. Fulfill your destiny. Few could resist such a challenge. Why do you delay? What else would you seek? Go then. Fare thee well. Do not be afraid. Remember well. Power, you have it. But power is inert without action and choice.